They say your instincts kick in before your brain can catch up. That gut feeling that something's wrong has saved more people than logic ever has. That's what I felt that day. I was around 14 or 15. It was the start of summer break. School was out, the air was heavy and warm, and my parents had both gone off to work like usual. I was alone in the house, just killing time. TV on low, snacks on the table, front curtains half closed to keep the heat out. It was one of those ordinary, boring afternoons that blur into each other. Until the knock. Not the doorbell. Not a friendly ring from the postman or a neighbor. This was a knock. Slow, firm, almost rehearsed. At first I thought maybe it was a package or someone trying to sell something. But when I peeked through the slit in the curtain, that idea disappeared fast. Two men. One stood squarely at the door. He was wearing a suit, but not in the way that made him look put together. He looked like a kid playing dress-up in his dad's clothes. The fit was off. The fabric looked too thick for summer, and something about his stillness made my skin crawl. He had this fake smile on his face, like he was pretending to be polite, but didn't actually understand what polite meant. The second man was further back, off the porch, facing the road. He wasn't even looking at the house, just standing there, watching the street. That was when I froze. Nobody stands like that unless they're on lookout. I backed away from the window and grabbed my phone. Called my mom immediately. I remember trying to sound casual, but my voice was shaking. I told her there were two men outside and that they gave me a weird feeling. She told me flatly, no one was supposed to come to the house. No work people, no deliveries, no neighbors scheduled, nothing. She told me to stay put, lock everything, and don't answer the door. I was about to listen to her, really I was, but something made me check again. I don't even know why. I opened the door just a crack, with the chain lock still in place, just to say something. And the man in the suit smiled wider, like he'd been waiting for me to open it. "Hey there," he said smoothly. "We're here to talk to your mom. Work-related. She knows us." Then he said her name, her full name, every letter, perfect pronunciation. It stopped me cold. My mom works in a field where privacy matters. She doesn't give out our home address. She doesn't mix work and home. This man should not have known her name, and especially not like that, spoken like someone reading from a file. I stared at him, didn't respond. My heart thumped hard, once, twice, like a warning. I muttered, "She's not home," and started to shut the door. That's when I heard it, from the back of the house, a sound I'll never forget, the subtle click of a back door handle being tested, followed by a faint rattle. Someone was back there, trying to open it. I slammed the front door and threw the deadbolt. I didn't look at the man again. I didn't need to. I ran. I ran through the house, heart hammering in my ears, and checked every window and door, every lock. I remember crouching by the kitchen counter, phone shaking in my hand as I dialed 911. I kept whispering, "Please come fast. Please come fast." The dispatcher told me to stay quiet, stay hidden, and that officers were on the way. I stayed crouched behind the couch, just barely peeking through the window slats. I could still see the man in the suit. He hadn't moved. He just stood there, still, watching, almost like he was waiting for something. And the other man, he never turned around. They were calm, too calm, like this wasn't the first time they'd done this. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights lit up the neighborhood, and just like that, they were gone. Disappeared down the street before the cops could catch them. But that wasn't the end. 2 nights later, it happened again. It was just past midnight when I woke up to a soft thump, then another, then rattling. This time, I didn't hesitate. I got up and moved quietly to the hallway. My mom was already awake, standing at her bedroom door with her phone in her hand. Her face was pale, lips tight. "Back door," she mouthed. We both heard it. Someone was back there, jiggling the door handle like they had the right to come in. I tiptoed to the living room and peeked out through the corner of the curtain. 3 men, one at the back door, one in the yard facing the house, and one slowly walking along the side of our garage with something in his hand, a crowbar. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. My mom called our neighbor, an older ex-Marine who'd always told us to call him if anything ever felt off. God bless that man. He showed up within minutes, shotgun in hand. By the time police got there, they had fled again. But this time they left behind their car. It was parked around the corner. Inside, police found zip ties, trash bags, 2 knives, one of them still in its plastic packaging. They never found the men, and as far as we know, they never came back. But I still check the locks 3 times before bed. I still flinch when someone knocks the wrong way. And sometimes when it's late and I'm alone, I still think about that man in the suit, smiling like he knew me, saying my mom's name like he'd already planned everything out. I shouldn't be alive, I know that. And the only reason I am, because the back door was locked. I was 14 the night it happened, a school night. My parents had left for a party and weren't going to be back until around midnight. They told me to keep the doors locked, not to open them for anyone, and to go to bed early. I remember pretending to be annoyed by all the instructions, but secretly, I was excited to be home alone. It felt grown up. It felt like freedom. The first hour was quiet, peaceful even. I wandered around the house barefoot, music playing softly in the background, texting my friends and scrolling through videos. Around 8:30 or so, I got up to make myself dinner, just some instant noodles. I remember standing in the kitchen, waiting for the water to boil, when something outside the window caught my eye. It was just a flicker of movement, barely noticeable, out on the front lawn. I leaned a little closer and peered out, expecting to see maybe a dog or a neighbor passing by. But there was nothing. The yard was empty. The street was dead silent. I stared for a moment longer, scanning the bushes and driveway, but saw no one. Figuring it was just my imagination, I went back to my food, brushing it off. The night still felt normal, still felt safe. After dinner, I went upstairs and decided to watch a horror movie. Something I probably shouldn't have done, being alone and all. But I like scaring myself. I like the adrenaline. I picked The Strangers, a movie I'd seen once before. It was creepy, unsettling, but familiar. I dimmed the lights, settled into bed, and hit play. The movie had been on for maybe 20 minutes when I heard it, whistling. At first I thought it was part of the film, but the sound didn't quite match the scene. It was coming from somewhere behind me, outside, low, slow whistling. The tune was oddly familiar. It took me a second to recognize it. It was Jeepers Creepers. The hairs on my arms stood up. I paused the movie, and the whistling stopped. The room felt completely silent, unnaturally so. The house suddenly felt too big, too quiet. I turned the movie back on, trying to shake it off as maybe a sound effect from the film, or maybe someone outside just messing around. But a few minutes later, I heard it again. Louder this time. The same tune, whistled slowly, deliberately. This time I knew it wasn't the TV. It was definitely coming from outside, from close by. I got out of bed and walked to the window, pushing the curtain aside just enough to peek out. And I saw him, a man standing in the middle of our front yard. He was facing the house directly, staring up at my window. His head was tilted slightly to the side, and his posture was stiff, unnaturally still. I couldn't make out his features in the dark, but I could tell he was tall, with broad shoulders and something slung around his neck that caught the porch light. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I stood frozen, eyes locked on him, and then he raised his hand to his mouth and started whistling again, the same tune, that slow, mocking melody, Jeepers Creepers. I stumbled back from the window, heart hammering in my chest. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong, that this wasn't a prank or a drunk neighbor. This was something much darker. And then I heard the sound of the front gate creaking open. I bolted. I ran downstairs, grabbed my phone and pepper spray from the kitchen counter, and barely had time to think before I heard the handle on the front door rattle. He was trying to get in. No knocking, no calls. Just silent, forceful attempts at the door, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone pressing their shoulder against it. I didn't wait. I flung the back door open and ran barefoot into the yard, sprinting through the side gate and across the driveway toward my neighbor's house. I remember the pavement scraping my feet, the cold air burning my throat, and the feeling that he was right behind me, just out of reach. I didn't look back. I banged on my neighbor's door with everything I had in me. My hands felt numb, my breath caught in my chest. Finally, the porch light flicked on and the door opened. The second I saw her, Mrs. Callahan still in her bathrobe, I burst into tears. I didn't care how it looked. I just pushed past her into the house and locked the door behind me. I tried to explain what had happened, stumbling over my words. She handed me the phone. I called my parents. Then I called the police. They arrived faster than I expected. I told them everything, the whistling, the man in the yard, the attempt to get into the house. They found him not far from our porch, crouched behind our trash bins. He was arrested on the spot. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know how long he'd been watching me, or if he had followed my parents when they left earlier that night. But I do know this. He hadn't brought anything to steal. No bag, no tools, nothing of value on him. Just a hunting knife. From that night on, I never stayed home alone again. It happened in November, not long after bonfire night. I remember because the smell of smoke still lingered faintly in the air, and the nights had started to turn brutally cold. That particular night, our mom was working a night shift at the hospital, which meant it was just me and my little brother Tommy at home. We'd always enjoyed those rare nights alone. No one to enforce bedtime, no one to scold us for the mess we made. It was freedom. So like we always did, we stayed up late, ate way too many sweets, and watched trashy TV on full volume, pretending we were adults. The house felt different at night, bigger, emptier. Even familiar corners seemed to stretch out into unfamiliar shadows once the lights went off. But we were used to it, mostly. Around 1:30 in the morning, I was downstairs on the couch, half watching a late-night show while Tommy was still upstairs. That's when I heard it. A loud thud, like something heavy hitting the floor above me. Not the creaking or settling of the house, but an abrupt impact, sharp and jarring. I paused the TV and listened. Seconds later, Tommy came running downstairs. He didn't say anything at first, but his face said enough. He was visibly shaken. Eyes wide, cheeks drained of color, breathing a little too fast. I asked what was wrong, but he brushed past me and collapsed onto the couch. I thought maybe he'd scared himself watching something online or just spooked himself with shadows. He had a vivid imagination and a history of nightmares, so I didn't give it much thought. Still, he refused to go back upstairs. I didn't press him. If he wanted to crash on the couch with me, that was fine. Time crawled by. Around 2:45 a.m., the house was mostly quiet. Tommy had dozed off, wrapped in a blanket, his head resting on a pillow he dragged from the couch armrest. I was still awake, only half focused on the television. The volume was low now. I'd turned it down after our earlier sugar-fueled chaos, not wanting to give the neighbors anything to complain about. Then the knocking started. It was a firm, deliberate knock, 3 short raps at the front door. My heart jumped. At that hour, any unexpected sound felt amplified and intrusive. I sat still for a moment, waiting to hear if it repeated. A pause. Then another series slower of knocks, as if the person behind the door wanted to make sure I heard them this time. My immediate thought was the neighbors. We'd been loud earlier, and I assumed they were here to complain. I got up and crept toward the front door, trying to be quiet. The wood floors creaked under my feet. When I reached the door, I looked through the peephole, but there was nothing. The front porch was empty, still, lit only by the orange glow of the street lamp down the road. No sign of movement, no footsteps, no retreating figure. I stayed there, unmoving and listening. But there was nothing. Just that still, oppressive silence. I locked the door again, tightly, and turned back toward the living room. I was halfway there when I remembered the hallway light was still on, flooding the house in a harsh yellow glow, so I turned to switch it off. That's when I heard it. The doorknob. It was moving, not rattling, not shaking, but turning. The metal handle creaked softly as it twisted back and forth, slow and steady. Someone outside was trying to open the door, not knocking anymore, but trying to come in. I froze. Everything in me screamed to move, to act, to yell. but my body wouldn't cooperate. My breath caught in my throat, and I could feel the pulse in my neck pounding like a drum. And then it stopped. Whoever was on the other side let go. The handle returned to its resting position with a quiet click. I waited, but no more sounds, no footsteps, nothing. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I backed slowly into the living room and returned to the couch. Tommy was still asleep, undisturbed. I didn't want to wake him or cause unnecessary panic. I told myself it was probably just someone drunk at the wrong house or a prankster out late. Something explainable, something ordinary. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I eventually drifted off beside him, though I don't know how. My body was exhausted, but my mind kept replaying the turning doorknob over and over again. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I remember was being ripped awake by Tommy screaming. He wasn't groggy or disoriented. He was terrified. His voice jolted me upright, and I looked toward where he was pointing. At the window, our living room has a long, horizontal window that overlooks the garden. We never really bothered with curtains, just some slanted blinds that only half covered the glass. That night, with the TV casting a faint bluish light across the room, the window acted like a mirror until something moved on the other side. There was someone standing in the garden, watching us. He was right up against the glass, face nearly touching it, staring into the living room, into us. At first, my brain couldn't make sense of what I was seeing, but as my eyes adjusted, the details sharpened, and they were horrifying. The man looked sick. His skin was a pale, almost yellow color, like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. His face was gaunt, with deep shadows beneath his eyes and around his mouth. Those eyes, I will never forget them. Bloodshot and bulging, with pupils so dilated they looked like pits. Empty, dark, animal-like. There was dirt smeared across his cheeks and forehead, and his mouth, God, his mouth was partly open, revealing blackened teeth and gaps where others should have been. He looked like he'd been living underground, like something that had crawled out of a hole just to find us. He didn't move, not even when we locked eyes. He just stood there, and then he smiled. It was slow, almost like a reflex. The corners of his mouth curled upward in a way that didn't look human. And as he smiled, his lips moved silently. He was mouthing a word, one single word, Tommy. I froze. My entire body locked up as I realized what I was seeing. He was mouthing my little brother's name, not speaking it, not shouting it, just mouthing it. Like he already knew him, like he'd said it before, like he'd been watching long before we saw him. We called the police. They didn't come right away. In fact, it took nearly 2 hours for them to arrive. By then, the man was gone. The garden was empty. The gate was still closed. No footprints, no sign of forced entry, nothing. The officers told us it was probably some homeless guy or someone on drugs, that we should install lights, maybe get a security camera. They didn't understand. This wasn't just a disturbed man wandering into the wrong yard. This was something else, something that watched us through glass, something that tried the door first, and worst of all, something that knew my brother's name. To this day, I don't know how he knew, and I pray I never find out. And that's a wrap for today's video. I hope you enjoyed these chilling stories. If you did, don't forget to drop a comment with your favorite one, hit that like button, and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales coming your way. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.